In the early 1900s, the Maskilim came to Yerushalayim, attempting to plant their seeds of what they hope would result in the destruction of Yiddishkeit. The old Yishuv courageously rose to defend Torah. It was a difficult battle. The Maskilim had money on their side. They had political connections on their side. They had PR on their side. And first and foremost, they had the Yetzer Hara on their side, who was very good at these things. Rabbi Yosef Chaim Sonnefeld, who was at the helm of the defense with great personal Mesiras Nefesh, once said, you know why at times we're losing the battle in certain arenas, that the Maskilim are getting so strong? Why so many Yidden are falling into their net? It's because their ambition to destroy Yiddishkeit is more sincere, more genuine, as our ambition to defend Yiddishkeit. In other words, their madrega of lishma, for their objective of unraveling Torah Sinai, is more genuine than our will to defend it. And that's why they're being more successful than we are. On the surface, it seems like a very strange comment to make. Who says we measure devotion this way, when it's going in opposite directions? Their heartfelt commitment to destroy Yiddishkeit is more sincere than our will to defend it, therefore they're being more matzliach? And the answer is, it's a Rashi in this week's Parsha. The Pasuk says, "Vayavi Elokim el Bilam Laila, vayomer lo, im likroi lecha bohu anosh." Then, if these people came to call you, then fine, kom leich itam. You have permission to go with them. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, you're being warned. V'achas hadavar asher hadaber elecha oisei saseh. And what does this mean? Im likroi lecha. If to call you, they have come. Zakt Rashi, im akriya shalacha. If the calling is for you, in other words, for your benefit, the savarato little aleirchan, you think you can make some money over here? This is a business deal. So kum leich itam. Rise up and you can go with them. But it won't work. What does this mean? Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu say to Bilam, I will allow you to go, although you're going to be restrained, it will backfire. But even this permission to allow you to go in order for it to backfire on, that's only if it's a business consideration. If there's no profit in it for you, then you don't even have permission for that. What does this mean? And b'chlau, did Bilam have permission to go, or did he not have permission to go? First, the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Kum lech itam, arise and go with them. And then, V'yicharaf Elokim ki ha'elechu, Hashem is angry that he's going. And these seemingly contradictory signals, whether he does or does not have permission to go, seems to come up again and again throughout the parsha. When Bilam has his donkey problem. So finally the Malach appears before him, and Bilam apologizes to the Malach. He says, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were standing over here. Rabbi, if this displeases you. And of course he understood the Malach was the Shliach of the Kadosh Baruch Hu, so Ashuvali, I'll turn around. It'll get me to turn back. I would. And if we take a closer look at Rashi, we're going to see Bilam wasn't really being very courteous over here. On the surface, it sounded like he was polite. Actually, he was saying, this isn't the first time this is happening. First, the Kadosh Baruch Hu tells Avraham Avinu to put Yitzchak on the Akedah. Then he sends a Malach to say, take him off. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells me to go, and now he sends a Malach, I shouldn't go? Fine. So I'll turn around. What should I do? And what's the Malach's response? Go ahead. So we know what Rashi tells us. The derech sh'adam lo yitzel leilach ba malichin. Bilam, you got the message. We're not going to stop you. You have the psira. Whether HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants you to go or not, you know the answer to that as well. Deep in our hearts, this isn't really something terribly unique. It happens to us all the time. We are given opportunities by HaKadosh Baruch Hu to do something, and deep in our heart, we know that we're not supposed to do it. But it is confusing. And Bilam could have at least hid under an illusion that I got mixed signal. One more kash. When Bilam saddled his donkey, and he made the decision to go, so the pasuk says, this is the pasuk Chaf Aleph, and there's the other analogy to Avraham Avinu. Avraham Avinu, through his great love, dismissed all of his servants and saddled the donkey himself to put Yitzchak on the Akedah. And Bilam shows that same devotion and love for opposite reasons, to go and hate. In any event, the Pasuk says, "V'yakan Bilam Avaykir v'yachvish esasayne v'yelachem sari Moav," and he went along with the princes of Moav who came to call him. So there seems to be this procession over here of Bilam and the princes of Moav. Right away you have the story with the donkey, but it seems that the only one on the scene over here is Bilam the donkey and eventually the Malach. The Malach was there all along, but Bilam didn't see him. What happened to the princes of Moav? The pasuk before, they were all traveling with him. Were they standing on the side over here and watching the whole story with the donkey? It's not mashma that way. Adarabah, the pasuk says, he was riding on his donkey and two of his servants were with him. It seems that the Sari Moav were taking a different route. Where were they? They went to call him, didn't they? How did they suddenly disappear? The Schwab in the Sefer Me'en, Beis Hashay threads a beautiful golden thread that gives us a deer and a perspective and how all of these pieces fall together. Originally, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Bilam permission to go along with the Sari Moav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu specifically told him, "Kum lech itam." They're calling you, you don't want to refuse them, you can go along with them. And so they started as a procession, going together. But Bilam had such a desire to curse Klal Yisrael that they were going too slow for him. So he just took off ahead of them. And that's why he was traveling alone with his donkey. He gave up the honor of traveling with all of these Chashav princes in order to get there quicker. Just like we see he gave up the honor of even asking someone to saddle the donkey for him, as if to say, it's taking you too long, I want to get there already, I'll do it myself. That's why Bilam is alone. And that is the Lashon. When we first find that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is clearly angry with Bilam. Vayichar Asalakim ki hoylech. So Rav Schwab is medayik. HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry because ki hoylech, officially, Bilam's position was, what can I do? I can't refuse them. They're asking me and I can make so much money. And this is my business, cursing people. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, okay, go ahead. I'll give you permission to go. Then when he gets the permission to go, it's not this, nebuchzik, what can I do? I have to go along with them. He takes off and leaves them behind. They're going too slow for him. So right away, the Yichar Asalakim ki hoylech. Why are you going alone? Do you have such a cheshek? Such a burning desire to curse Klal Yisrael? Didn't I specifically tell you can go because it's your parnasa? And it's very meduyik in Rashi. Because Rashi says on the pasuk, "V'yichar afalakim ki hoylechu," Rosh Davar Rabbi Eni Amaka in Bilam saw that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was not happy with this. V'nisav leilach. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him a quasi permission. Okay, for parnasa you can go, but v'nisav leilach, he had a taiva to go. This wasn't business over here. This was hate. And the end says when the Malach finally appeared and stopped him. And Bilam challenged the Malach that you're contradicting yourself. First you tell me to go, now you tell me I can't go. How did the Malach respond to that? The Malach responded by saying, Bilam, you know good and well what the situation is. But Yomer Malach Hashem el Bilam, don't make yourself like you're this never confused person getting these mixed messages, and if only you knew what the Ratzon Hashem really is. Your instructions were, as the Malach repeats over here, Lech imhu anoshim. The people are calling you, you can't refuse them, okay, go along with them. But where are those people? They can't even keep up with you, you're running so fast to be able to curse Klal Yisrael. This wasn't the kind of permission you even officially got. Now this leaves us with only one more question. Sav kol sav, why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu give Bilam, if not a green light, the lack of a red one, even along the lines of, okay, if you're making money, you can go. What difference does it make whether he's making money or not? He was going to curse Klal Yisrael. And the answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave us all a bchira. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't stop us from doing aveiros. That's the reason we're sent down to this world. And not only that, what you really want to do, sometimes, After you've established what you really want to do, you're even assisted and helped. Like the Lashon of the Rambam in Hilchos Tshuva, Reshus l'chaladim nesuna. Im ratza lahates atzme l'derech toiva v'liyas tzadik reshus b'yadai. If he wants to go the other way, hereshus nesuna. No one's going to stop him. As a matter of fact, the more he really wants, the more he sincerely wants, then the greater the chances he is going to be successful, either to build or to destroy. So when Bilam painted the picture, although it was obvious that was just a cover, but when he painted the picture of the last thing in the world I would want to do is hurt any Yid, Chas v'shalom, my best friends are Jews. It's just that, look, this is my business. What should I do? I can't turn down these princes, and I have other things here on my itinerary which unfortunately provide for me to go and to look into the matter. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, along those lines you can go. In other words, you claim that you're going to do this Aveira Shaloy L'Shma for the sake of money. Here HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave him permission because even an Aveira, when it's not done with the real Ratzain, when there are other motives, it has limited ramifications. If the only reason you're going is because of money and there's no real hatred, then your curses won't really have that terrible of an effect, because you're not coming from someone who really means it. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Im likrei lecha, it's for your own personal reason. It's not hate against Klal Yisrael. You're looking at your own taivas mumbling over here. Along those lines, you have permission to go. Dr. of Schwab, we have to learn from this. The rule is always midah taiva meruba midas piraniyais. The good side of the coin is always ever so much more powerful than the negative aspects. If even when it comes to doing an Aveira, the more sincere the person is for the sake of that Aveira, even that kind of devotion is going to cause success to come his way, is going to provide more support for him, how much more so when it comes to Torah and Mitzvahs, when it comes to doing Chesed. If we can somehow remove the ulterior motives of honor or money, whatever the case may be, and not think about our own prestige, but to do it, as Rabbi Yosef Chaim Zanefeld said, l'shem the objective, l'shem limud ha-Torah, not l'shem people calling me a lamdan, l'shem the people receiving the chesed, not l'shem me being the famous Baal Chesed. How much more so would we be successful in these endeavors? The more l'shma, albeit you have to start Shalai l'shma, but the more l'shma, then the more things you're zeicha to. And the analogy between Avram Avinu and Bilam, both waking up so early in the morning, running and dismissing their servants to do it themselves, shows us how wide the range of Bechira is. On the two very extremes you have ultimate l'shma, going in opposite direction, and in between you have people doing things for various other reasons. So why do we unfortunately see so many times that Rishonim are so successful in their wicked objectives? It's because Rav Schwab says they're doing it l'shma, l'shem rishus, no peniyos. I don't even want to be paid for it. I just want to do it for the sake of hurting the other person. And the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu created this world, by doing so, they are rounding up all of the koiches of Bechira to stand behind them. And there's only one solution to defend yourself against that kind of a pure, unadulterated will to harm. And that is exactly that same undivided devotion to do good. Because one thing is for sure, if it's their lishma and it's our lishma, meruba mida taiva, our lishma will endure, our lishma will be victorious. But if it's their lishma against our peniyos and personal gratifications, then we have to look out. On the other side of the coin, there is a tremendous chizuk that we can draw from here. This is brought down in the Sefer Das Sefer. There was a massive amount of movement to attempt to set up this platform for Bilam to curse Klal Yisrael. The Yelchu Ziknei Moav, Ziknei Midian, Ksamim Biyadam, and they came with all sorts of kishav apparatus and instruments, Vayivayu Bilam, back and forth and back and forth. The only one that was really stopped The only one that HaKadosh Baruch Hu really sent a malach to at least stop him and make him aware of what he's doing wrong was Bilam himself. The Ziknei Moav, the Ziknei Midian, they had no problem traveling back and forth, transferring all of this kish of equipment back and forth. It was only Bilam on his own that encountered unnatural opposition. Even his donkey didn't respond to him. A malach was sent to stop him. And in a sense, it is consistent with what we said till now. When you're doing something lishma, you will have a tremendous power. The more lishma, the more you are evoking your koyach of bechira to do it, whether it's lira or l'tayr. However, by the same token, the more lishma, the more you're evoking your power of bechira, which gives you an ability to do it, there will be a counter bechira. There will be maniyos that try to stop you. The Ziknei Moav, the Ziknei Midian, in all due respect to their ksamim and their truckloads of kish of equipment, they didn't have the real power. They were not stopped. Bilam, who boasted about the real sinner to Klal Yisrael, who had the negative sincerity to really curse, he is the one that was warned, that was stopped, that was blocked. Merubah need a taiva once again, says the Daf Sefer. You try to do something good and you run into difficulties. And you wonder, why is this happening to me? Trying to learn, I'm trying to daven, I'm trying to get my act together, and the telephone only rings when I sit down to learn with my child. On the morning I really made up to be good, I get this news that's now troubling me. Adarabba. If there's a malach in your way, that's a sign that you're the real thing. You must have touched on some nikud of lishma. You must be launching now something which is sincere, something which is potentially very successful and can change your life in a very positive way. And automatically there's a balance of bechira. Don't be discouraged or disillusioned when you feel like that by design you are being blocked from doing the right thing. The fact that a malach has been sent to block you is a sin, and there's an akud of lishma in your heart. And you should persevere. For Merubah need a taiva. If the malach that was sent to stop Bilam from doing the avera could only go so far, and at the end he had to let him pass through, the malach that is sent to stop us from doing mitzvahs can also go only so far. And if we really are looking for it, we'll find the leeway that allows us to get around, to pass through, and to soar on. Person once came to the Tzaddik Rebbe Zochaim Levrach and he said to him, Rebbe, what should I do? My eyes hurt me. The Rebbe, knowing whom he was talking to, said to him, are you sure your eyes hurt you? Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you are hurting your eyes. The Tfer Shloim explains that the Iker Kiddusha on a person depends on Shmiras Einayim. How careful are you with your eyes, and especially during the summer months where these nisyanos are great. And the difficulties are immense, but that's what makes us Yidden, to rise to these challenges. The disciple explains in a sefer to a bacher who wrote to him that he was Sebrachim, that he was Rachmano Litzlan Nichshal in these inyanim, and the disciple explained to him that, look, you have to understand that as great as there is a koyach hatumah that settles on a person, and as great as the avera is when he willfully is not careful, the other side of the coin is there's a tremendous kiddusha that settles on a person when he is careful, when he does turn away. As the balak says, every time a person walks down the street and he closes his eyes or turns his head, he should jump with a simcha. He was desired to fulfill the mitzvah, a mitzvah that malachim and serafim are looking down upon him with great jealousy. They don't have this mitzvah. A mitzvah that represents for him untold reward, unlimited schar. The Shemin Amunim brings that it's a tremendous opportune time to be mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. At that moment, when a Yid turns his head or closes his eyes or takes a different route, whatever the case may be, buries his head in a sefer on the bus or on the subway, in order not to look at posters, in order not to look at, unfortunately, the lack of tznius that we have to live in, there's a murdik and mesugaldik time to be mispal to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. During that moment of turning away is when you can turn to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, your tefillah should be answered. Rabbi Aaron Zechel Levracha said a Baruch can learn months and months in Lakewood and lose all of it with one subway ride. So A, if the whole subway ride is avoidable, avoid it. And B, if it's not, and sometimes circumstances are such that it's not avoidable, that the Yid be as careful as he can. The word achle means after. In other words, the Rebbeinu Shalom knows we're not malachim. The Rebbeinu Shalom put us into this scene, into this scenario. And all the Rebbeinu Shalom is asking of us to do is to try our best. So the issue isn't the first time someone sees something by accident. The issue is when he looks the second time. Achle levavchem. The achle enechem. Achle means you follow through. He saw it once, and instead of being careful, he looks again. That's when he begins his descent downward. But when he's careful the second time not to look, just the opposite. And it is nestoisiv in him a madrega of kiddusha that if not for this nesaya, he could have never had. So the Tfer Shloimeh is a murder Gemara. Hine am yotzim in Mitzrayim, hine kisos ein ha'aretz. That's what Bilam said. Bilam was crying. Bilam was complaining. He said, how in the world am I going to be able to curse these people? Hine kisos ein ha'aretz. The Yidden are so careful with their eyes. They cover their eyes. When they walk in the artsy ice, when they walk down here in the tomb of this world. Bilam tried klal after klal and it backfired. Why? So the Hakdamah to the Pasha is in a kisos ein ha'aretz because Yidden are careful. Now, ultimately, what did Bilam do? He was like a machshel them in Nus with the Bnei Ismail because he knew that this is the reason that his klolas aren't getting through. And the emphasis is a murder geword from the Baal Shem HaKadosh. The pasuk says, Kapitel Chav Daled pasuk Gimel. Yisem Eshaloi V'Yayma Ne'um Bilam B'Noi Ba'ar Ne'um HaGever Shesum Ha'ayin. How do we touch the word Shesum Ha'ayin? So Rashi says Bilam was missing an eye. The socket of his eye was empty. The Gemara says Hedrin Dashin Zaman of Yochanan Bilam Suma B'Yachas Mi'enava, he was blind in one eye. Ne'um HaGever Shesum Ha'ayin. Now, interestingly enough, the Targum teaches exactly the opposite. The Targum teaches Shesum Ha'ayin, the Shapir Chazi, that he was able to see very well. In other words, it was a remiss to his nevuah, to his darga of seeing above nature, which Bilam had. So it's interesting. You have over here the Gemara, and you have over here the Targum, that teach this pasuk 180 degrees apart. One teaches that he was blind in one eye, and the other teaches that he was able to see more. But according to the way the Baal Shem Tov explains the pasuk, it's not a contradiction at all. Rashi brings the medrash. So there shouldn't be a Tivchon Tela Umais. If we had a Navi, we also would have done Shuvah. Now, in order to be able to attain Nevuah, you required an extended level of Kiddusha, a higher level of Kiddusha. How does a person go about attaining this level of holiness? So we know that a person has 5 senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and touching. Now, corresponding to those 5 senses, a person, the Baal Shem Tov explains, has 5 spiritual senses. The Madregas of Ruach HaKodesh also come, categorizing these 5 different levels. The Libi Ra Har B'Chachma, the pasuk says in Kehel. Shlomo says, my heart saw much wisdom. That was a kind of Ruach HaKodesh in the form of seeing. And you have a pasuk in Malachim, and Asata Li'avdecha Leiv Shaimeya. I gave you a heart that can hear. It's another madreg of being able to receive heavenly signal, an ability for your heart to hear. There's a pasuk in Yeshaya, V'richai B'yiras Hashem, an ability to sniff, to smell, to be sensitive to the aroma of Yiras Shamayim. The same is true for all the other chushim. A person has to work to purify his physical chushim, and as a result, corresponding to his purification of that particular sense in a physical way, he automatically is zeicha to a kiddusha in the spiritual sense that is aligned with it. In other words, whatever madrega of Ruach HaKodesh or Nevuah there is in the union of a heart seeing, When a person is Mekadosh his eyes, his heart begins to see. When a person is Mekadosh his ears, his heart begins to hear, and so on. When a person is Mekadosh his Chush HaReach, then his Neshama begins to smell things. The famous bells of this Medrash, the bells are built with such Mesiras Nefesh and great Kavanos. Kiyidu, the story which we said many times, he was up 1,000 nights to be Zecher for Gili Eliyahu. Eliyahu Navi taught him the halachis of Beis HaKnesset. Now once, when the Belzer Rav, in his older years, was standing at the front of the Beis HaKnesset, at that time he was a Saginar, he could no longer see. Although the Shoyl Meshiv of Yosef Shoyl Natalzan, the Lemberger Rav, who was not particularly a chassid per se, answers in a tshuva to someone who asks him about whether or not he could light Chanukah left if he can't see, and that person, the Shoyl, said as a raya that he should be able to, that the Belzer Rav, when he was a Sagi Nor, also made a bracha on Chanukah left. So Yosef Shoyl answers whatever he answers. We won't get into it now, but he adds as a footnote, and this, if you say that the Belzer Rav made a bracha, even though he couldn't see, is not a raya, because what the Belzer Rav wanted to see, he was able to see. In any event, the Belzer Rav is a Saginor, and he's sitting in the front of the Beis HaKnesset. And there was a table in the back for the Orchim, for the wayfarers, and the Rashab used to sometimes wander from town to town, and people didn't know exactly, or didn't know at all who he was. He would be dressed regular, like a simple person wandering from place to place. And he was by the back table together with the other Orchim. And the Belzer Rav from the front of the Beis HaKnesset started to sniff, as if he was smelling something. And he started walking towards the back of the Beis HaKnesset until he finally came to the Rashab. No one who saw him recognized him because he was disguised, but the Belzer Rav who couldn't see recognized him. And he gave him the tour of the Beis HaKnesset. He said, "What do you say to this beam?" And the Rashab said, "Unbelievable, wow. What do you say to this window? Amazing." And then they came to a certain pillar over there, and the Belzer Rav said, "What do you say to this?" And the Rashab said, "Okay, it's nice." The story later on, it turned out that the Belzer Rav himself was present during most of the construction of the Beis HaKnesset, and he was mechavan his kavanais over there. The one pillar where the Rashab sort of gave a haphazard answer, "Yeah, okay, it's nice," and he didn't give the regular "how beautiful," the Belzer Rav was not there when they built that. That one day he wasn't there. So on the one hand, the Rashab was able to be margish where the Belzer Rav's kavanis were missing, and the Belzer Rav was a Saginar, was sensitive to the aroma of Kiddusha that was in the environment of the Rashab. The Belzer Rav later said the Rashab could not hide from him. He said, "A noiter a bris, one who truly guards the bris," referring to the bris of Yosef, the bris of Kiddusha, "can't hide from us. I can smell it." So getting back to what the Baal Shem Tov says. All of the physical chushim correspond to spiritual chushim. And if your physical chush is b'tahara, then you're zoicha to a sixth sense, so to speak, in regard to each of the senses. A higher level, a level of Ruach HaKodesh, that can see further than the normal eye can see, that can hear further than the normal ear can hear. And that's essentially how Nevuah takes its effect on a person. Now, Bilam Merasha was exactly the opposite of this. Bilam was metama, his chushim achitzoyim. The Chazal say, Bilam was over the worst of Eilos, particularly in inyonim of Kiddusha. And he was a Ma'oinin and a Menachish and a Mechashiv and a Koisim Kisomim. So how did the Ruach HaNevuah settle on Bilam? Factually speaking, how does it work? We know how the pattern of Nevuah associates itself to a person. But on the one hand, it had to be that the Ummah Su'elam should have a Navi. So how can the Nevuah be Chal when Bilam didn't live up to it in terms of preparing for the Nevuah? So there was only one solution, the Baal Shem Tov says. There had to be one eye that Bilam would not be Metama. And the only way Bilam would not be Metama his eye is if he didn't have it. He couldn't see anything wrong with his eye if he couldn't see through that eye. The story of a Yid who was summoned to the Gestapo office, and when he walked out, he said about the Nazi officer that had just interrogated him, one of his eyes is a glass eye. Someone else said, why? Why should you say that? It looks like a regular eye. And it turned out later on they found out that indeed one of his eyes was not a real eye, or he couldn't see out of that eye. And they asked a few later, how did you know? And he answered, because I saw the hate in his body that glared me down. There was no hate coming out of that one eye. Somehow I wasn't intimidated by the one eye, and I knew there's only one explanation for it. He doesn't see out of that eye. If that eye functioned, then it would also spout its hate. The only way Bilam could have a pure eye is by not having an eye. So therefore, Zakta Moshe. Rashi says from the Gemara, Shesona Ayin means that he could not see. He was missing the eye. And the Targum says, Shesona Ayin means Shapir Chazi. He was able to see very well. In other words, he was Zeichet to Nevuah. And Hainu Hach, it's not a contradiction. One complements the other. Because he was physically missing the eye, therefore he wasn't poigim in his re in that eye, that's how he was Zeichet to Nevuah. If not, the Nevuah could have had no effect on him. The emes is included in using your eyes properly, besides for inyanim of tznius and kiddusha, is the idea, the concept of sifar ginimyan. Not to look into someone else's pot, not to look into someone else's window, not to look at what model car someone else keeps buying. That feeling of jealousy, that feeling of why should he get it and not me? Besides for the Yisurei Torah that are involved, it's the beginning of a lot of trouble because you create a physical mekatreg in the form of an ayin hara. An ayin hara isn't just a superstition. An ayin hara means that you suggest something. You are suggesting that person is not worthy of it. Why should he get it? And sometimes, if indeed that person may have certain faults, then you're sort of opening the case. Is he taka worthy of it? Is he deserving of it? Perhaps he's a bit too showy with what he has, and as a result he may lose it. Now, of course, on the defensive end, one indeed has to be careful to keep his curtains closed, to restrict whatever luxury or whatever kindness Hashem has bestowed on him to the inside of his house and not to the outside, where he's making a point to others. He's asking for trouble by overdressing. Tire salesman tells a story of a person who came in and ordered 2 expensive tires that really looked nice. So he understood that he meant to put it on the front of the car. Usually people buy more expensive front tires where the safety is more important. And the man said, no, he wants them on the side of his car. The 2 tires along one side of his car because he parks across the street from his neighbor and this way his car looks much more expensive. There are people who live that way and think that way. And as a result, one is asking for trouble. But in terms of the one looking at it, he also has an achrayus to say, whatever he has, and whatever I have, I'm supposed to have. Everything is hashgacha pratiyus. I heard a wonderful marshal once. Imagine a person is stranded on the highway next to someone else. One person has a flat tire, and the second person is overheating. The person with the flat tire doesn't have a jack, and the one who's overheating ran out of water or antifreeze. Then along comes the third person, stops and says, oh, you need a jack? Here's a jack. And the one who overheated begins to scream, I want that jack. I'm in trouble. I need help. And the person tells him, but a jack is not going to help you. You have a different problem. And the man refuses to take no for an answer. Why should you get help? Give me that jack. I refuse to let you use it. I want the jack. You don't need it. If someone else has something that you don't have, is a simon you don't need it. It's not good for you to have it. For whatever reason, which is the Rebbeinu Shalom Cheshbon. Wanting something that belongs to someone else is not going to help you. In any event, who triggers an ayin hara? A balgaiva, which is one of the trademarks of Bilam. Chazal defined the Talmidim of Bilam as Rucham Givaya. Big shots. How come he deserves it, not I? I am more deserving of him. And that was one of the ways that Bilam used to curse others. How come he deserves it? How come not I? He has that fault. He has this fault. Take it away from him. So what happened? Bilam tries to curse Klal Yisrael. And he says, one of the things Chazal dashen from here is that he looked to see the tents, how they were set up, and he saw that they dafka built their tents, that the Yidden in the Midbar built their tents in such a way where the windows aren't aligned. So no one looks into the other person's tent to see what he or she is cooking for supper. In other words, everyone respected the other person's privacy. What you have, what I have, I have. And as a result, Bilam's klala fell apart. Because his klala was based on ayin hara. His klala was based on the seeds of jealousy. How come he has it, not I? And if that person is not deserving of it, indeed you open the case. But if the person who may have been the recipient of the ayin hara, the victim of the ayin hara, by nature minds his own business and is happy with what he has and doesn't look at what someone else has, that is his greatest defense, to be protected from ayin hara. And as a result, the attempted ayin hara, the attempted evil eye, falls on deaf ears. Which is a very good lesson to remember, especially in the summer, in bungalow colonies and camps, where this nisayon of keeping the windows unaligned can be difficult. But given the fact that it may be a protection from ayin hara, it's well worth its while. Suppose you have an employee that on one given day does not seem to have found all too many graces in the eyes of the boss. You can tell that the supervisor or the one in charge is really upset with him. So there are going to be three different kinds of reactions in terms of how the other employees view this. Most people will ignore it and say, let me just step out of the line of fire. I don't want to be in harm's way. Others may even step in to defend the person and say, but it's not so bad. Why are you yelling at him? And of course they know that they are taking a chance of incurring the boss's wrath by doing so. Those are his true friends. And then you will always have, Baruch Hashem, not always, but often have, a sinister, evil person who will take advantage of this situation, and he will walk along with the boss and say, and not only that, let me give you some more examples about how incompetent this worker is, and perhaps some suggestions how we can fire him, or really make his life miserable so that he will want to leave. And essentially that was Bilam's modus operandi. Bilam would wait for the midas hadin to take effect, generated by the chatayim of Klal Yisrael, and then he was there to sort of file a friend of court briefing with the midas hadin. As if to say, not only should you be angry on Klal Yisrael for that chait, let me explain to you why that chait is even worse than it sounds. And let me suggest an even greater einish. Bilam generally didn't work independently. He was an opportunist. He would be able to reserve his hate and unleash it at the proper time. When he saw the midas hadin being generated, then Bilam would step in and say, I'm with you. And therefore, when the Rebbeinu Shalom silenced the midas hadin, during this time period the Klal Yisrael was so vulnerable, Bilam was really left without a partner. His system could not be employed. As Bilam himself moaned, in what can I literally make a hole? Ekod means a hole, but it's a way of describing a clear, evil curse, where there's no question about what the person's intentions are. But if Hashem is not puncturing, so how can I puncture? And how can I have any effect with my wrath if I see that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is not sending it? There's a fascinating word here from the Vilna Gaon. The pasuk says, "Vayasim Hashem davar b'fi Bilam." What does davar mean? So there's a machlokes in the Gemara in Masechtas Sanhedrin. Rebbe Elazar says that it was a malach. The word davar over here refers to a malach. Hashem placed Bilam under the control of a malach who would not permit Bilam to speak when he sought to curse the Yid. Some of the different shots, they say it means that a malach entered his mouth and settled in his throat. And when Bilam opened his mouth to speak, a malach's voice would emerge instead of Bilam. In any event, that's what Rebbe Elazar says, that it was a malach that was placed into Bilam's mouth. Rabbi Yonasan says, chaka. It was literally a hook. The Rebbeinu Shem fastened a hook, so to speak, to Bilam's jaw, and whenever Bilam sought to curse the Jews, the hook was pulled and Bilam's jaw snapped shut, preventing him from speaking. Zakta Vilna Gaon, really there's no machlokes over here at all. We have the Eliezer who says that it was a malach, and Rabbi Yonasan who says it was this hook, are really saying the same thing. In order to explain that, let's first be magdim as follows. We know that when Hashem's name appears as Yud Kei Vav Kei, the Shem Havaya, that reflects the ultimate in Midas Harachamim. Elokim is Midas Hadin. Sometimes, instead of Yud Kei Vav Kei, Hashem's name appears as just Yud and the Hey, without the Vav and the Hey. When you take away from the Yud Kei Vav Kei, and Hashem's name appears only as Yud and Hey, that means the Midas Harachamim has been diminished, and it is a reflection of Midas Hadin. Like it says at the end of Parshas B'Shalach. Vayomer ki yod al keis ka
spelled Yud and the Hey, Mochamal Hashem B'Malak Midar Dar, Chazal Darshan, then Ein Hashem Shalem, V'Lakisei Shalem, until there will be Mechiyas HaMalak. So the Yud and the Hey reflect Midas Hadin. The Shem Elokim is also Midas Hadin when it's spelled out fully, but over here, it's just the opposite. If you don't have the full Midas Hadin, if Hashem's name appears as Aleph Lamed of Kale, instead of Aleph Lamed, followed by the Hey Yud and Mem, so you are taking away from the Midas Hadin, and Kale reflects Rachamin. Like the Pasuk says, Kale no, the Fun Allah, Kale is Rachamin. It's like we're withholding the full Midas Hadin of Elokim. Zaktir Nagaim, Bilam tried to effect every possible angle of the Midas Hadin over here. He tried to say the Shem Elokim, and he tried to say the Shem Ka. He tried to take away from the Midas Rachamin, and he tried to enhance the Midas Hadin. In order to counter both of these attempts, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent the necessary antidote. When Bilam wanted to say Elokim and be Ma'oid the Midas Hadin, so here HaKadosh Baruch Hu put a hook into his mouth. And as he started to say the word, suddenly there was a short stop. Bilam tried to say Elokim, and as soon as he began to say the word Aleph Lamed, and he wanted to continue with the Hey Yud Mem, the hook was put into place, and it stopped right there. All Bilam can get out of his mouth was Kale. He couldn't get the whole Hey Yud Mem out. And he realized right away, oh no, I started the Midas Hadin, but by being stopped, I have employed the effects that diminished the Midas Hadin. I was Moira Rachamim to Klal Yisrael. He was terribly upset. Instead of saying Elokim, I wound up saying Kale. This hook stopped me from finishing the word. So what did Bilam do afterwards? He said, at least let me say Ka. Let me try to curse by employing the Shem of Yud and Hey, diminishing the Midas Rachamim. So Bilam's intent was just to mention Yud and the Hey. And over here you can't use a hook, because the hook can always stop him out from saying a full thing. It can't add things, but a Malach can come and add things. So as Bilam said, the Yud and the Hey, along came a Malach and pushed him to finish Yud K Vav K. So you had a full manifestation of the Midas Rachamim. And Bilam was so terribly frustrated because he realized over here that he lost in both counts. It backfired on him twice. And therefore, Zaktir Nagaim, Bilam expressed himself in this manner. He said, Ma Ekav, how can I curse? How can I try to puncture Klal Yisrael with the Midas Hadin? It's like Kabli Kale. If I try to say Elokim, and instead Hashem breaks it after Kale. This hook was put into my mouth. I couldn't say out Elokim. And then when I try to at least diminish the Midas Rachamim, it doesn't work either. So Ma Ezram, how can I bring about Hashem's wrath? If Loizam Hashem, if there is a full manifestation of the Midas Rachamim over here, I tried to say just Ka, and I'm pushed by a Malach to say out the whole Shem Havaya. And don't think that Bilam didn't anticipate this, because in his initial response to Balak, he was worried about this. Kapitel Chav Beis Pasuk Yud Ches. Vayan Bilam v'yomer l'abdei Balak, and Bilam answered and said to the servants of Balak, in Yitali Balak miloi deisa. Even if Balak will give me a full house of Kesed Zav, l'yuchal laver es pi Hashem Elokai, lasos kitana oi gedoyla, Zaktir Nagaim. I know what's going to happen. I'm going to get into trouble. When I'm going to want to make the Shem kitana, when I'm going to want to reduce it from Yud Kei Vav Kei to Yud and Hey, I'm going to be pushed to say out the full Shem Havaya. Oi gedoyla, or when I'm going to want to take the Shem of Kale, which sort of withholds the Midas Hadin, and I'm going to try to turn it into Elokim, into the larger Elokim, to bring about the full Midas Hadin, I'm also going to be stopped. So what do you want from me? So Bilam knew about this to start with. But then again, he was hoping that somehow he will be able to get away with it. Now Bilam described himself as someone who is the Odeya Das Elyon, someone who knows the mind of Kaviyachol HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And the Gemara says he couldn't even figure out what his behemoth wanted. Das Elyon Haviyada, so he really believed that he knows what's on the mind of the Rebbeinu Shalom? And the Gemara answered, consistent with what we were explaining beforehand, how Bilam's method of curse worked. Every single day there is an exact moment in which HaKadosh Baruch Hu gets angry, so to speak, and if Bilam could only curse someone at that precise moment, then his curse can be effective. And indeed, often it would work. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to Klal Yisrael, you don't know what a great chesed I performed for you, that indeed during those days that Bilam tried to curse you, this rega of zam, this moment of anger never took place, because I knew Bilam would take advantage of it. Sheilamalik ha'asti kolois ma'yanim, says the Gemara in Sanhedrin, for had I become angry during any of those days, then who knows, Chas v'Shalom, what could have happened to Klal Yisrael. And that's what Bilam meant when he said, Mo'ekos, L'kabekel, Mo'ezim, Azam, Hashem, the Kadosh Baruch Hu doesn't send his wrath, which he usually does. So what can I do? I don't have my own power. I only try to leech on to the Midas Hadin. But if there's no Midas Hadin, then B'nechois Kapu Ishmacha, the way the saying goes in Yiddish, then I have nothing to make my hat with. And the Fagsan Zocha once showed me from the Tzadik HaKayin, he asks, what is the purpose of this Midas Hadin? The Gemara has a lengthy discussion about it, both in Masechtas Brachos and in Masechtas Sanhedrin. The Gemara asks, when does this Reg of Zam take place? Eimas Rasach, when precisely does Hashem become angry? And the Gemara answers, B'tlas Shoy Kamaisa, usually during the first 3 hours of the day. And there's a simin, when the comb of the rooster pales, and the Gemara tells us a whole story that Yeshua ben Levi had a neighbor of his, an Apikoros, who caused him a tremendous amount of pain. Not in a physical sense, but he was trying to spread his apikoros by misquoting Sukkim, and Rav Yeshua ben Levi tried to undo him. So he sat there once with a rooster and tied it to its foot, and he stared intently at it, waiting for the moment, waiting for the simin where the comb of the rooster is going to pale, and then he will curse him at that second, and his curse will be effective. And the Gemara says that he's waiting, and when the moment came, ki mota hahu shaita nimna, when that moment came, Rav Yeshua dozed off. So Yeshua said, Shema Mino La Vayracha. It's assuming even though this person is an apikoros and he's misquoting Sukkim, but this is not a method that a Kadosh Baruch Hu wants us to use, even if it's well intended, and even if it's directed against apikoros that are misquoting Sukkim. Tzaddikim should not get involved with this. Now, what is the point of this Reg of Zam? Why does the Kadosh Baruch Hu send it every single day? Why can we never have a Reg of Zam? Why should it be abolished altogether? Why was it made to start with? So the Tzaddik explains, and if we can give a little mashal, sometimes in a classroom. So a Rebbe gets sort of loose with his Talmidim, and there's a nice friendly discussion going on, and then you try to bring it back within the conservative realm of discipline in order to be able to teach and function. And sometimes you can switch back and forth, and sometimes it's a little difficult. So what happens? So the Rebbe asks nicely, okay, Rabbi say, please let's stop the conversation, let's continue on now. Sometimes it goes, sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, so there's something like a bang on the table. Okay, enough! And that's all you need. One like Rega Shazam, and of course it should be an external anger, not an internal anger, but at least a projection of some type of, we mean business now, and it has to stop. Let's go back. And that's all you need. You just need that one Rega Shazam. This Rega Shazam, if you can forgive the analogy, HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends to the world every single day. At the beginning of the day in the morning. We may not hear the Rega Shazam, but if we want to, we can feel it. And it gives us a traceable, so to speak. It's supposed to shake us up and get us started. This Rega Shazam gives us the power to stay away from the Yetzer Hara. The Yetzer Hara has a way of slowly sneaking into our bloodstream, and we begin to get pulled to whatever particular type of the Yetzer Hara is trying to entice us with. And at one point, the person has to feel a sense of pachad. What am I doing? Stop. No more. And that comes from the Rega Shazam. That's how we're supposed to use this Rega Shazam. It is something that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends to this world as a kind of tool for us to fight the Yetzer Hara with. Well, like we said before, there are always opportunists who look to take this type of a tool and bury someone with it. Now, what happens when the Rebbe bangs and says, okay, enough? And right there and then, some child takes advantage of the moment and makes some type of a joke, and everyone laughs. So he automatically triggers a response of being sent to the principal's office. The Rebbe cannot look away at this joke right by the bang, because then he loses the effect of the bang. Then you lose that ability of being able to rein in things into a normal course of discipline. And if you can't rein things back into a normal course of discipline, then you can't allow the looseness of a friendly discussion sometimes. So everything begins to unravel. And Bilam understood this very well. Bilam understood the purpose of the Rega Shazam was to be a sense of pachad and yira and Klal Yisrael to help him fight off the Yetzer Hara. But if he can jump in with a kitruk at that split second, synchronize it with the Rega Shazam, then he can do damage. If he can find some yid doing an avera right here and now and say, look what he's doing, then Bilam will trigger the exact response that he wanted. And that was really the secret to Bilam's curse. So during all these days that Bilam wanted to curse Klal Yisrael, there was no Rega Shazam, and the name of Bilam was stuck. But Bilam wasn't finished yet. Bilam was going to have one more shot at attempting to inflict damage, and this time, unfortunately, he was successful. Bilam understood that there was no Rega Shazam, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu would not get angry today, so that he will not have an excuse to be able to curse them. However, Bilam also understood the purpose of the Regesh Shel Zam. And therefore he said, let me see now, if there is no Regesh Shel Zam, and the purpose of the Regesh Shel Zam is to be Mo'er Yiras Shemayim into the hearts of Klal Yisrael, perhaps I can get at Klal Yisrael this way. And therefore, what did he say to Balak Melech Moav? He said, I have an idea. Elokayim shel elu soynei zimu. The God of the Jews hates immorality. Behem mesadim l'klei pishtan, says the Gemara in Sanhedrin. And I know that the Jews, they want very badly to have linen garments. The Maharsha explains that while in Mitzrayim, the Yidden had been accustomed to wearing linen clothes, because linen grows abundantly there. And at the time of this episode, the Yidden had not been in Mitzrayim for 40 years, and they were anxious to replace their old clothes with new ones. So, boy, come and I will give you a piece of advice. Asay lohem kloyim. Set up tents for them. V'hoishev behen zaynos. And place zaynos inside. Zekena mebechutz v'yalda mebefnim. An older one outside, meaning in front of each tent, and a young one inside. V'yimkul and klei tishta. And it will be under the pretext that they just came to sell the Jews linen garments. And Balak took the advice, Aslan kloyim. He made these curtain tents, mehashelek at Beis HaYeshimas. From the mountain of snow all the way to Beis HaYeshimas in the south. And the Hosheb ben Zaynos, inside there were Zaynos, the Kana mebechutz v'yalda mebefnim, an older one on the outside and a young one on the inside. And when the Yidden would go for a walk, the old one on the outside would say, maybe you want to buy something? And they would haggle on the price, and just as they were about to agree from the price, the young one from the inside called out, why don't you come in, I'll give it to you for even cheaper. And this is how they would trick Klal Yisrael to come into the tents. And after they would frequent the tents a couple of times, they would say, no, you mamish feel like you're a ben bayis over here. Shev brali atzmucha, sit down, choose for yourself from our merchandise at leisure. V'tzartzurei shel yayin amon yimunach etzlo. And pitchers of Ammonite wine were placed near her. At that time it was not officially offered yet. And they would offer the Yidden a drink of wine. And this would be machnas the Yetzer Hara into the hearts of the Yidden. And then she would say, just serve this avodah zarah. And the Yid would say, but how can I? I'm a Yid. And she would say, what are you talking about? It's just a Baal Pa'ar. You know how we serve this avodah zarah? We disgrace it by relieving ourselves in front of it. Adarabba. And that's how they would trick the Yidden into both avodah zarah and znus. And this triggered a terrible magesa for Klal Yisrael. Such a tzaddik, how did Bilam know it was going to work? Because if there's no Regesh Shel Zam, it is harder for Klal Yisrael to curtail the Yetzer Hara. So let me take advantage of that. Because Baruch Hu is not sending the Regesh Shel Zam, so I shouldn't be able to curse Klal Yisrael. That means Klal Yisrael is vulnerable. So we discussed before, and Bilam was an opportunist. Let us take advantage of that vulnerability. And the trick, unfortunately, worked to a certain degree, and it was a terrible magesa. Dr. Tzadik Weiter, Pinchas saw what was happening. He said, oh, there's no Regesh Shel Zam, so Bilam should not be able to curse us. And now Bilam took advantage of that. And look, Klal Yisrael was being this so, and it's going to be a terrible magesa, and there was a terrible magesa. So what did Pinchas do? He said, I have to place that Regesh Shel Zam into the hearts of Klal Yisrael, because HaKadosh Baruch Hu can't do it now. And that's where the pasuk praises Pinchas. Heishav es chamasi mi al b'nei Yisrael, b'kama yis kinasi b'saycha. Look, Rashi, b'kama yis kinasi, he took my revenge. And Rashi makes it clear, he displayed the anger which I should have displayed, says Hashem. What does that mean? If Hashem should have displayed it, so why didn't Hashem display it? So the Tzaddik explains, because Hashem couldn't. Because then Bilam would have taken advantage of it to curse Klal Yisrael. And therefore we're praising Pinchas for stepping in and doing it on his own.
The Medrash says that when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created the world, the trees were very frightened when HaKadosh Baruch Hu created nettle. The tree said, that nettle is going to turn into blades and axes that is going to chop us down. And the HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, don't worry. Without a wooden handle that you yourself would have to produce, the blades couldn't hurt you. The emes is, when someone else does something to you that hurts you, so we can put that into perspective. If we've learned enough Chaf Chaim or Sifrei Musa, we can say everything is bashert. No one can hurt me unless it was decreed from above, and whatever HaKadosh Baruch Hu does is good. It has nothing to do with him. I have to deal directly with the Rebbeinu Shalom. Sometimes what's more difficult to deal with is a mistake or a hole that someone digs for himself. How many times does this happen? Where we plan something which ought to work out for ourselves, and then in hindsight we see it was the most foolish thing in the world to do, and we got into such trouble that we would have never had if we didn't try to do this for ourselves? How many times do we say the wrong thing to the wrong person and then we simply throw up our hands in despair and we say, how could I have said that? How could I have done that to myself? How do you deal with this? I can't even blame anyone else. I can't even say it was hashgacha that he did it to me because I did it to myself. What can you say? What can you think to console yourself? And the answer is simple. You treat it the same way you deal with things that someone else does to you or says about you, or things that just happened to you that no one said or did anything, it just happened. That was a gzeira min hashamayim, and it was likewise a gzeira min hashamayim that you should say something or do something which hindsight tells you was the wrong thing. Rabbi's machshavos belevish, there are many machshavos in the heart of man, but the atzas Hashem husaka. The Eitz of Hashem, that is what is sustained. Schacter Rabbi Rabbanan, people don't teach this pasuk correctly. People teach the pasuk, Rabbi's machshavos belevish, a person has many machshavos. Today I'm going to do A, B, C, but atzas Hashem husaka. The Rebbeinu Hashem says, no, you're going to do E, F, and G today. But that wouldn't be a chiddush. That's obvious. David HaMelech doesn't even have to point that out. Pshat in pasuk is as follows. Rabbi's machshavos belevish, a person has many machshavos. In your heart, you feel, if I do this, it's going to work out for me. In your heart, you feel that if I say this, I'm defending myself. I'm restoring my honor. In your heart, you feel that if you demand this, I'm going to rectify so many wrongs that were done against me. And then you go ahead and you engage in what you thought, and at the end, the result is totally the opposite of what you expected, for better or for worse. Not only that, sometimes you realize that had you not tried to help yourself, you would have been far better off than engaging in your ill-fated plan that led only to make the situation worse. So David HaMelech is saying, don't just throw your glasses on the table. Don't just slam down hard. Rather, stop and think and say it was bashed. Rabbi's machshavos belevish, and the person thinks with those machshavos he's going to make things better for himself, but v'atzas Hashem usaken. The emes is, it's the atzas Hashem, it's the gzeira of Shemayim that has to be sustained. And the Rebbeinu Hashem will use your machshava and your decision-making process and your hagashim and your feeling to direct you to fulfill the ratzon Hashem. When you think that what you're doing is to fulfill your own ratzon or your own objective. The case in point, Bula. Shem Shmuel says a Mori de Kavart. First he quotes an interesting medrash at the beginning of Parshas Devar. The medrash says, Ru'uyos hayu habrachos liyamrei de Moshe. All the brachos in Parshas Balak that were given to Klal Yisrael, really they should have been said through Moshe Rabbeinu. Ella, but Shein Baruch and Moshe, had Moshe benched them, then the nations of the world would have said, their friend is benching them. They're not really worthy of those blessings. So therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu Dafka created a situation where Bilam is giving the brachas, and Bilam is definitely not motivated to bless Klal Yisrael out of any bias, out of any extra affection to them. He hates them. And if he benched them, so those brachos must be gzeira min hashamayim. There's nothing to talk about. It is due Klal Yisrael's way, and we can't stop it. Whatever this means, clearly there is a kind of bracha that had to come from Bilam, and this was by design. Now, the problem is, if Bilam is supposed to bench Klal Yisrael, Bilam has to be at least a little bit on the madrega to be able to bench Klal Yisrael. He has to cleanse himself a little bit from his chatoyah. He has to make some sacrifice toward Kiddusha. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a solution for that as well. A scenario is created where Balak invites Bilam to curse Klal Yisrael and offers him a tremendous amount of money. And Bilam feels this is a golden opportunity. Menela Bilam sits down and charts out a course. He says, how can my klala be effective? First of all, I have to lift my spiritual level, ironically, to become closer to Hashem, with the ultimate purpose of having a greater power in my koyach hadibur, And the Mela, my curses will manifest themselves. If he wants to do a very mischievous kind of a tshuva, a sneaky kind of a tshuva, he will elevate his kaya, bring some type of sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then use that enhanced power to curse Klal Yisrael. That was Bilam's husband. And Bilam knew how to do this. He knew how to elevate himself. So he works out 42 karbanis. Perhaps he didn't plan on all 42 to start with, but the potential of 42 karbanis from different places, he's going to be makor to Hashem. He instructs Balak to be makor to Hashem. He's going to lift the level of those that he represents as well as himself, and as a result, he will be Zaycha to Nevuah, and then the blow to Klal Yisrael. What happens? The karbanos work. He's all excited. He says, yes, we're becoming closer to Hashem. I feel the Spirit within me. And at the moment he's about to jump for joy and execute his plan, suddenly what happens? Blessings come forth instead of clothes. Can you imagine how frustrated Bilam is at this point? He says to Balak, if not for the fact that you were makar of these karbanos, if you hadn't listened to me, my brachas would have been useless. You can imagine how angry Balak was. I hire you, I follow your instructions, everything works, your level is raised, and now what? We take the gun, we prepare it, we fix it, we fill it up with the ammunition, we set you into position, you pull the trigger, and it shoots backwards on the shooter. We would have been better off not doing anything. Had Balak not listened to Bilam's instructions, had they not been makar of those karbanos, Bilam would have remained at an inferior level, and even if you would have been forced to bench Klal Yisrael, at least those brachos wouldn't have had as much power. That is Rabbi's Machshavos, Belavish, Vatzas Hashem, Usakim. Bilam plans it all out, laughs his way through this, saying, I'm fooling HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He thought he was going to Zas Elyon. His plan is working. He feels the ruach. And he really thinks that everything is in order until the very last second. So you see, everything is hashgacha. Not just what happens on its own, not just what others do to you, even what you do to yourself. When a Yid sits down to be mispal for the siyata d'shmaya, he begs Hashem not only that others shouldn't harm him, we beg Hashem that we shouldn't harm ourselves. Because we can have all the machshavos in the world to try to protect ourselves and to try to bring success into our life. But Atzaf Hashem Husakim, those very machshavos, those very plans that we set into motion could be our undoing. But by the same token, we can console ourselves. Don't slap yourself across the face and say, how could I do that? How could I say that? If you said it, it's a sin that was the Atzaf Hashem. The Eibishter took your machshava, and the Eibishter brought it to the conclusion that he wanted. The more you believe that, then you can swing around to understanding that whatever Hashem does is good. That comes with the Torah, once you begin to believe that everything is hashgacha, that takes the weight off your heart, that relieves the pressure. That's mamtik v'gevurais, that brings the chesed. This is not an excuse to be careless, to say, well, I'm not going to take the time to make the proper decision or research it properly or think it out or ask advice because whatever has to happen is going to happen anyway. No. So the priya, and if you're careless, there's chava einish. But assuming that you did your best and you asked your Ma'ir Derech, you asked a Yid that has a siyata d'shmaya, you looked for das Torah, you studied people that made similar decisions or your own past decisions, and you learned from your mistakes, assuming that you did everything reasonably possible to make the right decision, and it mamish backfired. And you realize that you'd done nothing, you would have been far better off. Then what happened? Take a deep breath and say, Rabbi's Machshavos Belavish, ultimately, Hatzaf Hashem Hasak. This was the Gzeira min Hashemayim. It's interesting, the Shem Shmuel quotes from the Gemara Masechtas Nazir, the Schar Nemdeis Karbanos, as a reward for the 42 Karbanos, Shehikr Balak Harasha, Zacha v'yatzim mimenu Ruth. The Ruth came out of him. Normally we say Zevach Hashem Tayeva. The sacrifice of the wicked is repulsive. It's not the carbon that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is looking for, it's the tshuva, it's the sacrifice, it's the cheshbon nefesh, the vidya that comes along with the carbon. The Rasha's carbon is meaningless. But over here, there was a certain, even though it was in a malicious way, but there was a certain ruchniistic tshuka over here. And definitely in as much as Balak was concerned. His orders by Bilam was, lift your people closer to Hashem. As a result, he generated a power that was buried within his people, and out came Ruth. So I think we can take the liberty of making a little kal v'chomer for ourselves. Madach Bilam, who has such a sadistic objective over here, despite that, he on the surface does something to try to come closer to Hashem Yisbarach, and we see that all of that is hashgacha, and what comes out of it, in Bilam's eyes, it was hara of haras. But for us, it's the greatest of blessings. We have the brachot, we have Ruth, we have David HaMelech that comes out of Ruth, the whole Mashiach, the whole Geula. So when a Yid who tries to do the right thing, not with a malicious goal, when a Yid tries to do the right thing because he really thinks it's the right thing, but to his eyes, ultimately it backfires. So swallow hard and say, this is the Hashgacha Sabayah, and whether I understand it or not, Lamaisa, what's going to come out is going to be the best thing. From how many Yidden have I heard this story? That when the Russians took over their part of Poland, the Russians gave them a choice. Either you accept Russian citizenship, which meant you subject yourself to the laws of communism, whose party platform was to eradicate Yiddishkeit, or you stay here as a refugee. Many of the people accepted Russian citizenship. It was their guarantee they would be protected against the Germans. It was their guarantee they would be protected against the Russians. By being offered the citizenship and not accepting it, then you're looking the huge lion in the face and you're saying, I'm not going with you. How could they do that? I heard from my Meshgiach who said that a Yid told him he went then to an Adam Gadol, an Erlich Yid. He wasn't a popular person, but he was a tzaddik, a person who sat and learned from morning until night. He said to him, you learn Torah Lishma, tell me, should I accept the Russian citizenship or not? And the man told him, no. How could you do it? It's like you're signing that you're giving up your Yiddishkeit. And the Rebbeinu Shem will dafka help you if you don't do it. And he and many of the Yeshiva-like didn't. They didn't accept Russian citizenship. What did the Russians do? They came in, arrested them as spies, and took them off to Siberia. Someone told me, you can't imagine the cries that went on when the family said goodbye. Half the people that went to Siberia didn't come back alive. What terrible life of torture awaited them. And those who accepted the Russian citizenship stood there and smiled and said, listen, you do things the old-fashioned way. You're not reasonable. You go and ask some rabbi, what do you expect? And this Yid that gave them the Eitzah walked them to the train station. He would also be sent the next day. And he told them, please, have a munah. Today is Chav Gimel Sivan, he told them. That's the day in the story of the Megillah that the second letters went out. Now, the Gzeira of Achashverosh cannot be changed. Once the king made a decree, you can't change it. But you could reinterpret the decree. That yes, there will be a battle, but the battle ensures that the Yidden can strike against their enemies, not the other way around. So you will see, we did the right thing with Shem Shemayim, and this is the Hashgacha Sabayah, even though it appears now like we wrote our own death sentence. And they were shipped off to Siberia, and you can imagine what freezing Gehenna they went through there. But you know something? Most of them survived the war. And those who stood there waving their Russian citizenship papers, laughing at them as the train pulled out to Siberia, little did they know that it would only be a short while before the Germans would cross the border, and they were there for the shechita. Little did they know what was really happening over here was that the Russians were dragging these people away to Siberia out of the clutches of the Germans. Could anyone have anticipated that? Could anyone have figured that out? Rabbos Machshavos Belevish. You try to do your best. Make the decision. Make difficult decisions. But don't try to judge yourself by the outcome of what it appears happened as a result of your decisions, because you don't even know the end of the story. Atzas Hashem L'Sakim. It is the Atzas Hashem. And the Atzas Hashem is good, whether you understand it now or not. Whether you understand it on this world or in the next. And perhaps that's why the Gemara says, Dikshu, Lekvoya, Parshas Balak, B'Kriyashma. They didn't because of Terech Tzibur too long. What's Parshas Balak doing in Shema? You see, you say, V'Hayim Shemaya, if you listen to Hashem, everything will be great, the Yasafta de Genecha, the Siroshcha, the Yitzurecha. And then we say, then you're going to be in trouble. But you look around and you say, I don't see that. I see people who are and they seem to have plenty of Yisafta de Genecha. Then I see people that are trying to V'Hayim Shemaya Tishmu, and they have nothing. But don't get flustered. Because until the end of the day, whether it's on this world or in the world to come, you don't see the Atzaf Hashem. Bilam was jumping for joy. Balak was jumping for joy. They're being makar these karbanos. They feel the inspiration. They outsmarted Hashem. And then the last second, their klala gets switched to bracha, and they realize, no, Hashem is outsmarting them. For their own vices. But that you only see at the end of the day. So, Dikshu L'Kvaya Pashas Balak is the way Chazal are telling us, have patience. Learn from the mistake of Bilam and Balak. You commit yourself to Torah and Avodah. And if as a result you endure sacrifices, understand. Atzaf Hashem Usakim. We don't know how HaKadosh Baruch Hu's timetable works. Someone else is going away from Hashem, and he has it his way. Bilam and Balak were also dancing until the last moment. You don't know when that last moment is. Adarabah. The Yehavtas Hashem Elikecha is tested when you try to do your best and you're faced with disappointments and difficulties. That is what is going to make that switch from klala to bracha at the end so much more exciting and so much more powerful.
This shiur is distributed by Koladas, 11 Stay Chenet Street, Yerushalayim. For donations, please call 02-5383-999. Fax 02-538-0267. Postbox 57035.